She was an ordinary woman in every way, or at least that's how everyone at the school saw her. She didn't draw attention to herself, never spoke loudly, and went about her day quietly. She worked at the school office, handling papers, attendance records, and helping students find classrooms. Most people barely noticed her. She was there, but she blended in, like a quiet shadow that moved through the busy halls unnoticed. No one would have guessed that. Beneath her ordinary appearance, she carried a gift that could make anyone who heard it stop in their tracks. She had a past filled with music, a secret that no one at the school could imagine. Her hands, which now typed out letters and filed documents, had once danced across piano keys with such skill that people would have called it magic. But that part of her life had been put aside years ago. Life had its demands, and survival had taken priority over passion. She accepted it quietly and moved on. Her days at the school followed the same pattern. She arrived early in the morning, greeted the students with a soft smile, and helped wherever she was needed. She rarely spoke unless asked, and she avoided the gossiping groups of teachers in the staff room. She liked her routine because it was simple, predictable, and safe. The teachers, meanwhile, were busy with their own world. They had students to manage, lesson plans to prepare, and competitions to oversee. Music teachers, in particular, had their eyes on the upcoming annual music evaluation week, a time when students would be tested on their skills and potential. Everyone at the school was talking about it. Students were nervous, teachers were stressed, and the piano in the main hall had become a topic of both admiration and fear. It was an old piano, polished and shining, but notoriously difficult to play. Even students who had trained for years struggled to hit the right notes under pressure. The teachers had built it up in their minds as an instrument that demanded perfection, and they often joked, sometimes cruelly, about who could or could not play it. The ordinary woman quietly walked past the music room one day, carrying a stack of papers. The room was filled with laughter and teasing as teachers exchanged stories of students who had stumbled through their pieces. She paused for a moment at the doorway, observing the chaos. One of the senior music teachers, known for being particularly sharp-tongued, waved a hand at her mockingly. "Come on in, maybe you can give it a try." "I hear you have hidden talents," the teacher said sarcastically. She smiled politely but didn't respond. Most people would have laughed nervously and walked away. She didn't. She simply placed the papers on the counter and continued on her way. Unnoticed once more. Days passed, and the music evaluation week drew closer. The school was buzzing with activity. Students were practicing tirelessly, teachers were preparing critiques and schedules, and the piano sat in the center of the main hall, waiting. One afternoon, chaos erupted during a rehearsal. A student, nervous and distracted, accidentally spilled water over the sheet music, ruining it. Panic spread across the room. The music teachers needed a solution immediately. Students were scrambling to retrieve copies, and some teachers were on the verge of frustration. The ordinary woman happened to be walking by, carrying some folders to the hall. She saw the commotion and, out of habit, stepped in to help. "Do you need these?" she asked softly, holding up some clean sheets she had brought from the office. The teachers, flustered and tense, barely registered her presence. Then, in a moment of impatience and poor judgment, one teacher made a careless remark. "Since you're here anyway, why don't you play it?" "Just show us if you can handle a simple piece," the teacher said, laughing, expecting her to refuse. Others joined in the laughter, thinking it would be amusing to see someone so ordinary attempt the piano. Some teachers whispered that she would probably fumble and embarrass herself. They didn't know what they were about to witness. The woman hesitated for a moment, looking at the piano. Her heart skipped a beat. The keys called to her like old friends, and an old memory flickered in her mind, sitting at a grand piano in a quiet room, music flowing from her fingers, losing herself in every note. She had not played in years, yet the memory was vivid. Her hands twitched slightly, almost unconsciously. Finally, she spoke, her voice calm but confident. "Are you sure you want me to play?" The teachers laughed again, thinking she was joking. "Of course. Go ahead." "Let's see what you've got," one of them said. Waving her toward the piano, she walked slowly toward it, each step deliberate. She sat down on the bench, taking a moment to adjust her posture, just as she had done so many years ago. The room fell silent, partly because of curiosity and partly because the laughter had stopped. Everyone sensed that something unexpected might happen. She placed her fingers on the keys and closed her eyes for a brief moment, as if greeting old friends. Then she began to play. It started softly, almost like a whisper. The notes were precise, delicate, and beautiful. Her hands moved with confidence and grace, each one knowing exactly where to go. The piece was difficult, but she played it flawlessly, her fingers gliding over the keys as if the piano had been waiting for her all these years. The room, once filled with noise and chaos, became completely silent. The teachers and students froze, unable to believe what they were hearing. The ordinary woman, who had blended into the background for so long, now held the attention of everyone in the room. Every note resonated with emotion and skill. Some teachers looked at each other in shock, realizing that they had misjudged her entirely. They had expected a stumble, a mistake, or some awkward fumbling. But what they heard was perfection. Her face remained calm, serene even, as she continued to play. There was no showiness, no attempt to impress. She played purely for the music, letting it flow naturally from her fingers. The teachers who had once laughed at her now watched with awe. Students who had been nervous moments before now held their breath, captivated by her mastery. When she finally finished, the room stayed quiet for a few seconds, as if no one could believe what had just happened. Then slowly, one of the teachers clapped. Then another. Soon, the entire room erupted into applause, not loud or chaotic, but filled with genuine admiration. The ordinary woman simply smiled softly and stood up, ready to leave, but the teachers stopped her. They wanted to know how she had learned to play like that, where she had hidden such talent all these years, and why no one had ever seen it before. She hesitated, feeling a mix of pride and modesty. She had spent years putting her music aside, believing that the world had no place for her gift. But now, faced with the astonished faces around her, she realized that perhaps it was time to acknowledge it again. She explained softly that she had trained for years as a child, dedicating herself to music, but life's challenges had forced her to focus on other responsibilities. She had taken this job to support herself and her family, leaving her piano behind, thinking that her talent would stay hidden forever. The teachers, some feeling embarrassed for underestimating her, listened intently. They realized that they had judged her unfairly, assuming that someone quiet and ordinary could never hold such extraordinary talent. Their laughter and sarcasm now felt inappropriate, replaced by admiration and respect. Word of the ordinary woman's extraordinary talent began to spread throughout the school. Students whispered about the quiet clerk who could play the piano like a professional, and teachers couldn't stop talking about what they had just witnessed. It was a story that would soon become a legend within the school walls, a tale of hidden talent, humility, and the surprising power of a single performance. From that day on, no one looked at her the same way again. She was still quiet, still soft-spoken, but now she carried an aura of quiet confidence. People realized that sometimes the most remarkable abilities are hidden in the most ordinary-looking people. And the piano, which had once been just a piece of furniture in the hall, had become a bridge to a world she thought she had left behind. The day after her unexpected performance, the school felt different. The quiet woman moved through the halls as usual, carrying folders, checking attendance sheets, and helping students, but now the way people looked at her had changed. Teachers who had once barely noticed her now stopped in the hallway, offering smiles or polite nods. Some students whispered excitedly as she passed, their eyes wide with curiosity. She tried to ignore the attention, preferring the calm routine she had always known, but it was impossible to remain invisible after what had happened. Word of her piano playing had spread like wildfire. Everyone was talking about the performance, about how someone they had dismissed as ordinary had stunned the music teachers with such skill. There were small murmurs in the staff room, questions about her past, and a growing fascination with the woman who had hidden her talent for so long. Some teachers were embarrassed, realizing how harshly they had judged her. Others were curious, almost eager to see if her performance had been a fluke or if she could truly play at that level. She noticed the change, but she didn't let it affect her demeanor. She still kept her voice soft, her steps measured, and her presence quiet. She had learned long ago that attention could be a double-edged sword. People admired talent, but they also expected more once they knew it existed. She wasn't ready for that kind of spotlight. Still, a part of her felt a quiet thrill. For the first time in years, she felt seen, not for the work she did quietly behind the scenes, but for something that was deeply hers, her music. That afternoon, the chaos of the music room returned. The student whose sheet music had been ruined earlier was still anxious, and the teachers were preparing for the next round of practice. One of the senior music teachers, who had been the loudest critic in the past, approached her cautiously. His face was a mixture of admiration and hesitation. "I need your help again," he said quietly, lowering his voice so no one else could hear. "There's a piece coming up that's causing trouble for the students. Could you take a look?" She hesitated for a moment. She could sense the anticipation in his tone, the unspoken expectation that she would perform again. But she also noticed something different this time. He wasn't mocking her. There was respect there, genuine curiosity. She nodded gently, feeling a mixture of nerves and excitement. She had not planned to return to the piano so soon, but she couldn't deny that a small part of her missed it, the feeling of music flowing through her fingers, the sense of connection to something larger than herself. She followed him into the music room, where several students were practicing different pieces. The room smelled faintly of polished wood and music paper, a familiar scent that brought back memories she had almost forgotten. The piano sat in the corner, its surface gleaming under the light from the windows. Her heart beat faster as she approached it. She placed her hands on the keys, feeling the smooth surface beneath her fingertips. It was like coming home. The teacher handed her the sheet music. She glanced at it, quickly scanning the notes. The piece was challenging, full of fast sequences and subtle harmonies, but she recognized it. She had learned it years ago, practiced it countless times, yet she hadn't touched it in more than a decade. She took a deep breath, allowing herself a brief moment of calm before beginning. As her fingers pressed the keys, the room transformed. The students paused mid-practice, their attention drawn to the music. The teacher leaned against the wall, arms crossed, watching silently. The notes poured out effortlessly, precise yet full of emotion. Every key she pressed seemed to resonate perfectly, capturing the spirit of the piece. The sound filled the room, echoing softly against the walls, and for a moment, it felt as if time had stopped. The students were captivated. Some leaned forward, unable to take their eyes off her hands. Others closed their eyes, letting the music wash over them. They had never seen someone play with such confidence and expression. Even those who had been struggling with their own pieces forgot about their mistakes. Absorbed in the beauty of what they were hearing, the teacher who had invited her couldn't hide his astonishment. He had expected competence, but this exceeded all expectations. He realized that her first performance had only been a glimpse of her true ability. This was someone who had trained rigorously. Someone who understood the piano not just as an instrument but as a way to communicate emotion. Each note she played told a story, conveyed a feeling, and brought the music to life. When she finished, the silence lingered for a moment longer than usual. No one moved, no one spoke. The music had created a space where everyone was suspended, caught in the wonder of her talent. Then, slowly, the applause began. It started softly, hesitant, but grew steadily as students and teachers alike expressed their admiration. Some teachers exchanged looks, a mix of disbelief and newfound respect. They had misjudged her, underestimated her, and now they were witnessing the truth. She smiled gently, not for the applause, but because she remembered why she had loved playing music in the first place. It was never about recognition or praise. It had always been about the feeling, the connection, and the joy of creating something beautiful. She closed the piano lid softly and stood up, feeling a sense of fulfillment that had been missing for years. Afterward, the teachers asked her more questions, curious about her training and her past. She explained that she had studied piano seriously as a child, dedicating herself to hours of practice each day. Life circumstances had forced her to stop, and she had taken her office job to support herself and her family. Music had been put aside, not forgotten, and now it was returning to her life in unexpected ways. The students were eager to learn from her. They asked if she could give them guidance, teach them techniques, and help them improve. She hesitated initially, unsure if she wanted to take on that role. But she realized that sharing her knowledge could be rewarding, that helping others discover their own love for music could be as fulfilling as playing herself. She agreed to assist the students during practice sessions, though she preferred to stay in the background, letting the music speak for itself. The music teachers, on the other hand, were inspired. They began to see her not as an ordinary office worker, but as a remarkable musician with a wealth of experience and skill. Some felt guilty for having mocked her, while others felt privileged to witness her talent firsthand. They started including her in discussions about upcoming performances and even asked for her input on student evaluations over the next few days. Her presence in the music room became more noticeable. Students would stop by, hoping for a tip or a quick lesson. Teachers would ask for her opinion on difficult pieces. And every time she touched the piano, it was as if she was reclaiming a part of herself that had been dormant for too long. The music flowed naturally, effortlessly, and the more she played, the more confident she became. What amazed everyone most was not just her technical skill, but the way she could make the piano sing. She didn't just play the notes. She conveyed feelings, told stories, and captured the essence of the music. The room seemed to breathe with her, the students following her lead, the teachers watching in awe. People who had been skeptical now found themselves inspired, realizing that talent could be hidden in the most unexpected places. One afternoon, the principal of the school walked into the music room. He had heard about her performances and wanted to see for himself. He observed quietly from the back, watching as she played a complex piece, her fingers moving with precision and grace. When she finished, he approached her, a smile on his face. "Your talent is extraordinary," he said sincerely. "We should find a way to share it more widely, not just within these walls." She felt a mixture of pride and humility. She had never sought recognition, but she couldn't deny that the idea of using her skills to inspire others was appealing. For years, she had kept her talent hidden, thinking it belonged only to her private world. Now, she was beginning to see that her music could touch others, help them grow, and even change their perspective on what was possible. From that moment on, her life began to shift. She was still the quiet office worker during the day, carrying papers and checking attendance, but she was also becoming a guide, a mentor, and a source of inspiration for students and teachers alike. Her story spread further, and people outside the music department started taking notice. The ordinary woman who had been overlooked was now recognized as someone truly extraordinary, not just for her skill, but for her humility, grace, and the way she shared her gift without seeking attention. Her confidence grew, but she remained grounded. She understood the value of patience, persistence, and quiet dedication. She knew that talent alone was not enough. It was how one used it, nurtured it, and shared it that mattered. And as she continued to play, teach, and inspire, she realized that this chapter of her life was only beginning, that there was so much more music waiting to be discovered, not just in her fingers, but in the hearts of those around her. The ordinary woman had stepped into the piano room that day expecting nothing. But she had walked out leaving a mark on everyone she encountered. Her music had transformed not only the classroom, but the way people saw her. She had reminded everyone that true talent often hides in the most unassuming places, waiting for the right moment to. The days after her second performance at the school passed in a blur of quiet recognition and subtle excitement. The ordinary woman moved through her routines as always, carrying papers, checking schedules, and helping students, yet everywhere she went, she noticed a change. People didn't see her the same way anymore. Students would glance at her with curiosity, whispering among themselves, while teachers paused, sometimes hesitating before speaking to her. Her presence, once unnoticed, now carried a quiet weight, yet she remained calm. She didn't like attention, and she had learned long ago to move through life without expecting recognition. But she had to admit, a small part of her enjoyed the newfound respect. After years of keeping her music hidden, it was strangely comforting to know that people were beginning to see who she truly was. Not just the quiet office worker. One afternoon, the music teachers gathered in the staff room, speaking in hushed voices, aware that she was within earshot. They were planning the upcoming recital, discussing which students would perform which pieces. Then someone mentioned her name, and the conversation shifted instantly. "We might actually consider asking her to perform at the recital," one teacher said, his voice tinged with awe. "If she can play what she played the other day, it would be unforgettable." The ordinary woman, who was passing by with some documents, overheard the conversation. She stopped for a moment, unsure how to react. Performing at a recital meant stepping into a spotlight she had long avoided. She had spent years keeping her music private, fearing judgment and expectations. But now, the thought of sharing her gift, of allowing music to touch more lives, stirred something deep within her. A part of her, the part that had loved music most as a child, began to awaken. That evening she sat at her small, quiet desk in the office. Papers spread out before her, yet her mind was elsewhere. She thought about the piano, the feel of the keys beneath her fingers, and the way the music had come alive when she played. She remembered the thrill of expressing something without words, of letting every note tell a story. It had been years since she had felt that rush, and now it called to her again. The next day, the music teachers approached her with a proposal. They asked if she could help prepare a student for an upcoming competition. The student was talented but lacked confidence and struggled with a particularly difficult piece. They had seen how the ordinary woman's guidance inspired others and believed she could make a difference. She felt a mix of nerves and excitement, but she agreed. Knowing that she could help without being in the center of attention herself. In the music room, she guided the student patiently, showing subtle hand movements, gentle techniques, and ways to feel the music rather than just play it. Her teaching was calm, encouraging, and filled with quiet authority. She didn't raise her voice or demand perfection. She allowed the student to discover the rhythm, the emotion, and the joy in the piece. Slowly, the student improved, playing passages that had seemed impossible just days ago. The teachers watched from a distance, impressed. They realized that her talent was not limited to her own performances. She could inspire others, nurture skill, and bring out the best in students. There was something remarkable about the way she worked, how she balanced discipline with empathy, precision with patience. It was clear that music wasn't just a skill for her. It was a way to connect, to teach, and to transform. Word of her guidance spread quickly. Students from other classes began asking for advice, hoping to learn from her experience. She became a quiet mentor, moving through the music room with a gentle presence, correcting finger positions, encouraging expression, and helping students feel confident in their abilities. She didn't seek recognition, yet her influence was growing. Subtle but undeniable. One afternoon, a difficult situation arose. A student was about to perform a challenging piece during practice, but nerves had taken over. Their hands trembled, their breathing was uneven, and they felt ready to give up. The teachers were tense, unsure how to calm the student. The ordinary woman stepped in, quietly guiding the student to the piano bench. She placed her hands over theirs for a moment, adjusting their posture, then encouraged them softly. "Listen to the music," she whispered. "Don't think about mistakes. Feel it. Let it speak through you." At first, the student hesitated, still overwhelmed by anxiety. But her calm presence, her confidence, and the way she handled the keys with grace made a difference. Slowly, the student began to play. The notes came out hesitant at first, then stronger, clearer, and more expressive. By the end of the piece, the student's face was radiant, and the teachers were amazed. They had witnessed transformation, not just in skill, but in courage and confidence. The ordinary woman stepped back quietly, not seeking praise, yet everyone knew the reason for the success. She smiled softly, a mixture of pride and humility. Helping others had reminded her why music had always been so important to her. It wasn't just about performing. It was about connecting, inspiring, and creating moments that mattered. That evening, After school, she lingered in the music room alone. She sat at the piano, letting her fingers move across the keys once again. The room was quiet, filled only with the soft resonance of the instrument. She played a piece she hadn't touched in years, losing herself in the flow of music. It was personal, private, and deeply fulfilling. Each note reminded her of why she had loved piano so much, and she felt a sense of peace she hadn't experienced in a long time. As she played, she realized how much she had missed this part of herself. Life had demanded her attention in other ways: work, responsibilities, family, but music had never left her heart. Now she was reclaiming it slowly but surely. It felt as if the piano itself had been waiting for her return, patient and welcoming, ready to embrace her talent once more. The next few days were a mix of teaching and performing. She helped students, guided small groups, and occasionally played for teachers during practice sessions. Each time she touched the piano, the room seemed to change. Students became more confident, teachers more attentive, and the ordinary woman herself felt more alive. She was no longer just a background figure at the school. She was becoming a source of inspiration, quietly transforming the environment around her. Even the most skeptical teachers began to notice. Some had doubted her abilities, thinking her first performances were a fluke. Now they saw consistency, mastery, and an extraordinary ability to teach and connect with students. They started involving her in important decisions about music classes, asking for her insights on pieces and technique. Her opinions were valued, respected, and often sought out. Despite the growing recognition, she remained humble. She didn't let praise define her, nor did she seek the spotlight. For her, music was never about fame. It was about expression, learning, and sharing. She focused on the students, on helping them find their voice, and on creating moments of beauty in the school that would stay with them forever. One day, a student asked her why she had stopped playing for so long. She paused, considering the question carefully. "Life sometimes pulls you in different directions," she said softly. "But the music doesn't leave you. It waits, and when the time is right, it returns." Her words resonated with the students, who began to see that talent and passion could endure, even through years of challenge and change. They were inspired not just by her skill, but by her story, by the quiet determination, the patience, and the humility that had allowed her to return to the music she loved. As the school prepared for the upcoming recital, it became clear that she would play an important role. Teachers discussed what piece she could perform, knowing that her playing would leave a lasting impression on everyone in the audience. But more than that, her influence had already changed the students, giving them confidence and hope. She had become more than just a pianist. She had become a mentor, a guide, and a quiet leader. All without seeking recognition or applause. The ordinary woman, who had once believed she was just an invisible part of the school, was discovering a new part of herself. She was realizing that talent and dedication, when shared with others, could create ripples far beyond the individual. Each note she played, each student she guided, was part of a larger story, a story of resilience, humility, and the quiet power of hidden talent. Even as the recital approached, she remained calm. She focused on the music, on the students she was helping, and on the simple joy of playing. She didn't see herself as extraordinary, but those around her knew the truth. They saw the depth of her skill, the beauty of her expression, and the generosity of her spirit. For her, music had always been a private language, a way to express feelings too deep for words. Now she was learning that it could also be a way to touch others, to inspire, and to transform. And as she continued to teach, play, and guide, she realized that this was only the beginning. There was still so much music to play, so much potential to uncover, and so many hearts to reach with her gift. The ordinary woman had stepped into the world quietly, expecting nothing, and yet she was leaving an indelible mark. She was proving that true talent often hides in the most unassuming places, waiting for the right moment to shine. And in that moment, it shone brilliantly, changing her life and the lives of everyone around her, one note at a time. The days leading up to the recital were filled with a mixture of excitement and tension. The ordinary woman moved through the school quietly, her presence a calm anchor amid the flurry of last-minute preparations. Students were practicing tirelessly. Teachers were coordinating schedules and rehearsals, and the piano in the main hall had become the center of everyone's attention. Everyone who had witnessed her talent felt a growing sense of anticipation. They knew that what was about to happen could be something extraordinary. She herself felt a quiet nervousness. Although she had played several times in the music room, performing in front of a full audience with parents, students, and teachers watching was an entirely different experience. The thought of stepping into that spotlight after years of avoiding attention stirred both excitement and anxiety. But deep down, she knew she could do it. She had prepared, practiced, and guided others. Now it was her turn to share her music with the wider school community. On the morning of the recital, the hall was buzzing. Parents took their seats, students whispered nervously to each other, and teachers made last-minute adjustments to lighting and sound. The piano stood at the center, polished and gleaming, as if ready to welcome her hands once again. She entered quietly, carrying her sheet music and a sense of calm determination. People glanced up, some whispering, others simply staring in anticipation. She took a deep breath, acknowledging the presence of the audience but keeping her focus inward. When it was her turn, she walked to the piano with measured steps. The murmurs and whispers faded into silence, replaced by the expectant hum of anticipation. She sat on the bench, positioning herself carefully, feeling the weight of the moment but letting it flow naturally through her. She placed her fingers on the keys, closed her eyes for a brief moment, and let herself remember the countless hours she had spent practicing, the melodies that had carried her through her childhood, and the passion that had never left her heart. The first note echoed through the hall, soft and deliberate. The audience was immediately captivated, leaning forward in their seats. She played with a confidence and grace that made each note sing. The music was not just sound. It was emotion, storytelling, and expression all in one. Every key seemed to respond to her touch, and the hall filled with a resonance that left everyone breathless. Parents, who had come expecting a standard recital performance, were stunned. Teachers who had doubted her abilities now watched in awe, recognizing the depth of her talent. Even the students, some of whom were skilled musicians themselves, could hardly believe what they were hearing. It was as if the ordinary woman had transformed the piano into a living voice, speaking directly to every listener's heart. As the piece progressed, her confidence grew. Her hands moved effortlessly across the keys, each note precise yet full of feeling. She played with a natural fluidity, drawing the audience into the music, making them feel each rising and falling tone. People were leaning forward, eyes wide, completely absorbed in her performance. There was no showiness, no unnecessary dramatics, just pure, heartfelt music that demanded attention without asking for it. During a particularly difficult section, a hush fell over the hall. It was a part that had caused students to falter in rehearsals, yet she navigated it flawlessly. The music seemed to flow from her soul, telling a story of struggle, resilience, and triumph. Those who had doubted her found themselves holding their breath, caught in the magic of the moment. It was more than technical skill. It was the power of a life lived with dedication. The kind of talent that comes not just from practice, but from lived experience and a deep connection to one's art. When the final note rang out, there was a brief silence, as if the hall itself was savoring the conclusion. Then slowly applause erupted. It began with a few hesitant claps, but quickly grew louder, until the entire room was clapping, cheering, and some were even standing. The ordinary woman stood, her hands gently resting at her sides, acknowledging the audience with a soft, humble smile. She did not raise her arms in triumph. She simply allowed the music to speak for her, letting the appreciation wash over her quietly. The teachers approached afterward, their faces a mixture of amazement and admiration. "I can't believe what we just heard," one whispered. "It's incredible." Another added, "We never imagined someone like you could play like this. We misjudged you." She smiled politely, accepting the compliments but remaining grounded. She had never played for recognition. Her goal had always been to express, to communicate. And now it seemed that her message had reached everyone in the hall. After the performance, students crowded around her, eager to talk about the music, ask questions, and share how inspired they felt. They wanted to know how she had learned to play, how she had practiced, and how she made the music feel so alive. She answered patiently, sharing small tips and gentle encouragement. Her demeanor was calm, approachable, and generous, which made the students feel comfortable and inspired. They realized that talent was not just about ability, but also about humility and the willingness to share one's gift. Even the parents approached her, some with tears in their eyes, expressing how moved they had been by her performance. They spoke about how rare it was to witness such natural talent, how much her music had touched them, and how her presence had left a lasting impression on the school. She listened quietly, grateful but not seeking the praise. The joy came from the knowledge that she had shared something meaningful, that she had made a connection with others through her music. The principal, who had watched her perform from the back, approached her afterward. "You have given everyone here a gift today," he said sincerely. "This performance is something they will remember for years. You have a rare talent, and it should be nurtured and shared." She nodded, feeling a quiet sense of validation. She had always known the value of music, but hearing it acknowledged in this way reinforced the importance of continuing to play, to teach, and to inspire others. That evening, after the recital, she returned to the music room alone. The hall was quiet, empty except for the soft echo of the piano. She sat down at the bench and let her fingers move across the keys once more. There was no audience, no applause, just the pure, unfiltered sound of the music she loved. She played slowly at first, savoring each note, then allowed herself to play freely, losing herself in the flow. In that moment, she realized that this was where she belonged, not in the office filing papers, but here, at the piano, connecting with music and with herself. Over the next few days, the school was abuzz with conversations about the recital. Teachers, students, and parents could not stop talking about her performance. They shared stories, expressed admiration, and marveled at the quiet woman who had captured everyone's attention with her talent. Some students even began practicing harder, inspired by the possibility of achieving excellence with dedication and guidance. Her influence, though quiet, was spreading. The music teachers began involving her in more aspects of the department. They asked for her input on lesson plans, sought her guidance in helping struggling students, and even requested that she occasionally perform at school events. She agreed, not because she wanted the recognition, but because she understood the impact her music could have. She had seen how it inspired, comforted, and motivated others, and she realized that her role at the school could be more than just administrative. She could be a source of growth and inspiration for everyone around her. Her performances became more frequent, but she remained humble. She never sought the spotlight. She allowed her talent to speak for itself. Each performance, each interaction with students, strengthened her confidence and deepened her connection with music. She had come a long way from the quiet office worker who had once feared judgment, and she now embraced the possibility of using her gift to help others through this journey. She discovered something even more important than skill: the power of persistence, patience, and humility. She had waited years before allowing her music to surface again, but when the moment came, she embraced it fully. Her story became a lesson for students, teachers, and everyone at the school, a reminder that talent, no matter how hidden, has the power to change lives when nurtured and shared. By the end of that week, the ordinary woman had transformed not just her own life, but the atmosphere of the school. The halls felt lighter, the students more motivated, and the music department more inspired. People had begun to see that greatness often hides in unexpected places, waiting for the right moment to emerge. And she, once overlooked and underestimated, had become a quiet force, changing the lives of everyone she touched with her hands, her music, and her spirit. Her story was no longer just about her hidden talent. It was about courage, resilience, and the willingness to step forward when life presented an opportunity. She had been forced into performing by circumstance, but in that pressure, she had discovered not only her own strength, but also the power of sharing what one loves. And as she continued to play, teach, and guide, she realized that the journey had only just begun. There were more students to inspire, more music to play, and more hearts to touch. The ordinary woman had become extraordinary not through fame or recognition, but through quiet dedication, talent, and a willingness to embrace her gift. After the recital, life at the school slowly began to return to its normal rhythm, but something had changed. The ordinary woman, who had once moved through the hallways quietly and unnoticed, now carried a quiet confidence in her steps. She still performed her office duties with care, helping students and teachers as before, but there was a subtle shift in the way people regarded her. There was respect, admiration, and curiosity in their eyes, qualities that she had rarely encountered in her everyday life. Despite the attention, she remained grounded. She had never played the piano for fame or recognition, and she did not intend to start now. Her joy had always come from the music itself, from the feeling of creating something beautiful, from the connection that formed between herself, the piano, and those who listened. And in the weeks following the recital, she realized that her music had begun to do more than just entertain. It had inspired, motivated, and even healed in ways she had never expected. Students approached her with questions, eager to learn not only about technique but also about the emotional side of music. They wanted to know how to convey feelings through the piano, how to connect with the audience, and how to overcome nerves. She guided them patiently, offering small tips, gentle corrections, and encouragement. She emphasized the importance of practice, focus, and patience, but also reminded them to enjoy the process. Music, she said, was not a race, it was a journey, one that required dedication and love. The teachers, too, began to rely on her more. Some sought her advice on selecting pieces for upcoming performances, while others asked her to mentor struggling students. They had once doubted her abilities, but now they recognized that she possessed not only exceptional skill, but also the ability to inspire confidence in others. She did not take the praise lightly. Instead, she let it serve as a quiet reminder of the journey she had taken from being overlooked to becoming someone who could make a real difference. One day, a parent approached her after a practice session. Their child had been struggling with confidence and had made remarkable progress under her guidance. The parents' gratitude was heartfelt. "We can't thank you enough," they said. "You've given our child something more than just musical skills. You've given them belief in themselves." She smiled softly, her heart touched. She had never considered the broader impact of her music, but in that moment she understood how far-reaching it could be. Her piano playing was no longer just personal, it was transformative. As the weeks turned into months, the school began to plan larger events, inviting the woman to participate in a more public capacity. She was asked to perform at assemblies, local competitions, and even community gatherings. Each time she approached the opportunity with humility, never seeking the spotlight, yet always leaving a profound impact. Her performances became more expressive, more nuanced, and each note carried a depth of experience that touched everyone who heard it behind the scenes. She continued to teach students, developing their skills and nurturing their passion for music. Some students came to her timidly, afraid of making mistakes, but left with newfound confidence. Others, already talented, learned how to add emotion and feeling to their performances. In every interaction, she emphasized the importance of patience, practice, and staying true to oneself. Her quiet guidance, combined with her extraordinary skill, created an environment where students flourished. Even as her influence grew, she remained the same humble woman she had always been. She did not seek awards or recognition, though they were occasionally offered. She cared little for applause, focusing instead on the joy of music and the satisfaction of helping others discover their potential. Her story, which had begun with a chance performance, had evolved into a journey of quiet leadership, compassion, and excellence. One afternoon, while preparing for another school event, she noticed a student struggling with a difficult piece. The student's hands shook slightly and their confidence seemed fragile. She approached gently, placing a hand on the piano and guiding the student through a series of exercises to build strength and familiarity. "Feel the rhythm in your heart," she said softly. "Don't just play the notes, live them. Let the music tell your story." The student followed her instructions, slowly gaining confidence. The notes became steadier, the rhythm more precise, and the performance began to flow naturally. The ordinary woman observed quietly, offering encouragement and subtle corrections. When the student finished, they beamed with pride. "I never thought I could play this well," they whispered. "Thank you." She smiled, realizing that moments like this were more rewarding than any performance could ever be. She was not just playing music, she was shaping lives. As her role at the school solidified, she also began to reflect on her own journey. She thought about the years she had spent in the shadows, her talent hidden and unused, and how life had demanded she focus on other responsibilities. She realized that her gift had always been there, waiting for the right time to surface. And when it did, it had not only transformed her life, but the lives of those around her. She understood now that talent, when nurtured and shared, could create ripples far beyond what one could imagine. The school decided to hold a special concert to honor her contributions. Students, teachers, and parents gathered, eager to witness her performance once again. The hall was filled with anticipation, and whispers of excitement floated through the air. She entered quietly, carrying herself with the same calm humility that had become her trademark. As she sat at the piano, she felt a familiar sense of peace. The keys were familiar friends, and the music was waiting to tell its story. When she began to play, the audience was immediately captivated. Each note carried the depth of her experience, the patience of her practice, and the emotion of her journey. The music filled the hall, moving through every corner, touching hearts in ways words never could. Some listeners closed their eyes, allowing themselves to be carried by the sound. Others leaned forward, mesmerized by the precision and feeling in every movement of her hands. The performance was not just a display of skill. It was a testament to resilience, dedication, and the power of passion. Every person in the hall could sense that this was someone who had lived, who had overcome, and who had chosen to share their gift generously. When the final note faded, the silence that followed was profound. It was as if everyone needed a moment to absorb the beauty of what they had experienced. Then the applause began. It started slowly, then grew louder and louder, until the entire hall was clapping, cheering, and some even standing in ovation. She stood quietly, acknowledging the audience with a gentle smile. She did not bask in the attention. Instead, she allowed the music and the moment to speak for themselves. The impact of her performance was not measured in applause alone, but in the inspiration and admiration it had created. Afterward, students surrounded her, eager to share their excitement and gratitude. Teachers approached with admiration, some expressing regret for ever doubting her, others expressing pride in having witnessed her talent. Parents spoke of the joy and wonder they had felt, their words sincere and heartfelt. She listened quietly, her heart full, understanding that her music had created connections that would endure long after the notes faded. That evening, as she returned to the quiet of her office, she reflected on her journey. From the days when she had been overlooked and underestimated, to the moments when her talent had quietly emerged, she had grown not just as a musician, but as a person. She had discovered the power of patience, the joy of sharing, and the fulfillment that came from helping others achieve their potential. Her life, once ordinary, was now enriched in ways she had never imagined. She realized that true success was not measured in recognition or applause, but in the impact one had on the lives of others. Through her music, she had inspired students to pursue their passions, encouraged teachers to reevaluate their assumptions, and reminded everyone that talent and dedication could be found in the most unexpected places. She had become a quiet force, shaping the culture of her school through kindness, humility, and extraordinary skill. In the weeks that followed, her influence continued to grow. Students practiced with renewed determination, teachers sought her guidance, and the school community began to embrace a culture of encouragement and inspiration. She remained at the center of it all, not seeking attention, but quietly shaping the future through her music and mentorship. And so, the ordinary woman who had once been underestimated and overlooked became someone truly extraordinary. Her journey was a testament to the power of patience, resilience, and the courage to embrace one's gift. She had learned that talent, when nurtured and shared, could create ripples far beyond what one could imagine. Her music had changed her life, and in turn, it had touched the lives of everyone around her. In the end, it was not the applause, the recognition, or even the performances that defined her. It was the quiet dedication, the willingness to share, and the impact she had on those who had the privilege of hearing her play and learning from her. The ordinary woman had discovered that being extraordinary was not about being in the spotlight. It was about making a difference, one note, one lesson, and one heart at a time. Her life, once ordinary, had become a story of inspiration, proving that hidden tea